Okay, we will get started. Good afternoon again. My name is Muffy Grant. I am the Executive Director of the North Carolina Early Childhood Foundation. And we are the home of Family Forward NC. I am joined here today by my colleagues, Lisa Finaldi, who is the Community Engagement Leader at the North Carolina Early Childhood Foundation and leads Family Forward NC for us, along with Emily Swartzlander, who's the President of EBS Strategies, a marketing and communication small business. Emily also serves as our Chief Strategic Advisor for Family Forward North Carolina. And Catherine Bryant. Catherine is a strategic human resources consultant at Performentor. She is on our advisory council to create the certification model and has been a wonderful champion for our work. So I'm just going to kind of give you a little bit of the plan for today. We are going to share with you why Family Forward Initiative and family-friendly workplaces are so important. We will showcase our resources, tell you a little bit about the Family Forward NC employer certification and how you and your business can become certified. And then we'll end with questions and answers, including Catherine taking some of your most pressing HR questions. Just a little bit of housekeeping. Please put your questions in the chat, and I will be monitoring that so that we can be sure that the correct panelist gets your question. So just to do a little bit of a level set, Family Forward NC harnesses the power of the private sector to have positive influence on the children and their communities through family-friendly business practices and processes and policies for their workforce. We at the North Carolina Early Childhood Foundation take a whole child birth to age 8 approach to literacy. Third grade literacy is a proxy for child and family well-being and is a predictor of future success in education and in life. We know that when children start life off with healthy beginnings, beginning at a healthy birth weight, that they have supported families and communities, access to basic needs and connections and networks, and access to high quality early care and learning with regular attendance, that the likelihood of them reaching those third grade benchmarks is quite high. We do this at the foundation through 3 core strategies, which are to promote understanding, spearhead collaboration, and advance policies that we know are backed by science and data that work to get children reading on grade level by the end of 3rd grade. Family Forward is a real implementation of the work of the foundation and a process that we went through with the state, the Pathways to Grade Level Reading, which took those 3 domains, healthy beginnings, supported families and communities, and high quality early learning with regular attendance, developed 2 frameworks and measures for success for each of them, policies and data. Family Forward fits in nicely under the supported families and communities because it really harnesses the power that businesses, small, medium, large, have to codify human resources policies that help families have the support that they need to better nurture and support and provide for their children. So it really is a win-win for both the employer, the employee, and the children that flourish in your community as a result of those strong human resources policies. So with that, I will hand this over to my colleague, Lisa Finaldi, who will get into a little bit more depth about the Family Forward North Carolina initiative. Lisa?
Thank you, Muffy. It's great to be here with everyone today. I wanted to give you a little background about Family Forward, and then we will dive right into the certification program so you can learn how to become a certified employer. And Emily will tell us about that. So Family Forward is an initiative of the foundation, and our focus is on engaging employers to create family-friendly workplaces that not only benefit our state, but also are important to the health and well-being of our children. So we say that family-friendly workplaces are business smart. Who doesn't want to recruit and retain talented workers in the market we're in today? Family-friendly, which improves job satisfaction. And Ben Knight, who owns a restaurant in Wilmington, Benny's Pizza Parlor, he told us that when employers are happy, customers are happy. And future ready, we can all support our children's efforts and building a foundation for life success. So we also engage and inspire employees across the state. Since 2018, we've published a guide, and it's recently been updated, and we'll show you a little bit about it shortly, that lists the policies that benefit employers, workers, and children. We also publish case studies so that employers can see real life examples of the benefits that employers see from having family-friendly workplaces. And also we interview employees to understand what a difference it has made for them and their family. We've also directly talked to more than 7,400 employers. And during COVID, we created some resources that were shared across the state. And we have a second advisory council, of which Catherine is a part of, that advised the model to create the certification program. So when we look back at, why this is so important, we talk about how children's brains are built and they're not born. It is a dynamic process, and it's not predetermined. And the most rapid periods of brain development is during this period of birth to 8. And every experience that a child has is built into their brain. And during that first year of life, our sensory, language, and cognitive parts of our brain are developing at a rapid pace. And if we just look at cognitive development, even from a workplace perspective, this is the part of your brain that is helping you develop things like working in a team, being able to adapt in a work or personal situation. So really, these are amongst the most important periods of a child's life. We can look at it from a financial perspective as well. Nobel laureate Heckman looked at how we spend our public dollars in the country, and he has shown that when we spend it even before birth on pregnant moms and those earliest years, that we can get up to a 13% return on investment. Here's a little bit of a shocking information, maybe to some of you, but we can change this trajectory for our families and children. So the new data will be coming out soon about 4th grade scores, but as Muffy mentioned, this is a predictor of academic success, and only 36% of our students are reading at or above proficiency. And when we look at the disaggregated data, we see that Black, Hispanic, and Indigenous children are performing at a much lower rate than white children. And if we look at, in the short term, where our high school students are today, and we see they're also struggling to be college ready. So then we took a look at families in North Carolina, and we see how families really have changed over time. And in many cases, workplaces are not adapting to the change in families and not necessarily providing the supports that they can in order to create a more family-friendly workplace. So what's happening is parents and caregivers are passing up work. They're switching jobs, they're quitting, it's interrupting their education. They're not accepting promotions. And if we look at a little bit about why this is happening, some of these disruptions are related to childcare. And I know you know a lot about that. It's inaccessible to most parents. You're spending a good portion of your income. And also we have a model for childcare that really doesn't work in North Carolina and in most states across the United States. And just briefly, you can see how both in rural and metropolitan communities, childcare is quite expensive. And we've heard so much in North Carolina about housing costs. And so probably if we did this today, the housing pieces would be even much higher, putting even a greater burden on families with young children. So a bit more about childcare. We've done a survey in the middle of the pandemic to ask parents their experiences and challenges about childcare, both pre-pandemic and during. And we see that everyone is impacted. The parental income, we see business revenue is affected, as well as our state tax revenue. And so pre-pandemic, it totaled 2.4 billion, and mid-pandemic, 2.9. So we're also losing income because of this inadequate care. So I mentioned earlier that we have a guide to family forward workplaces, and this is just a quick snapshot about what you will find in the guide. So I took childcare as an example of a policy, and you'll see on the left, what are the opportunities for a employer to contribute to support a family's needs on childcare. And then you'll see some of the results, and you would see that the results are both immediate, reducing stress, and long lasting, can improve high school graduation rates and overall educational attainment. We also looked at paid leave. We have many workers in our state who are making an hourly wage, and they contribute tremendously to our economy. And when they don't have paid leave, this is exacerbating our inequalities in North Carolina. It's also leading to lost wages. People are making choices to either quit their job, or they're getting fired because they needed to take some paid time off. And so it has a negative impact on our economy as well. But we do see that when families have access to paid leave, it increases the likelihood that they're going to remain in their job and also raise their long-term earnings. So again, this is what it looks like in the guide. You'll see this one details a little bit further about paid sick and safe leave. If you don't know what safe leave is, it is when an employee has a crisis in their life and needs some very specific time off. It could be around domestic violence, but other issues as well. And so again, you can see the benefit to an employer, to parents, and to children is significant. And the last one we looked at just for this discussion today was around accommodating pregnant and breastfeeding employees. We've heard a lot about women not re-entering the workforce after COVID. And we do know a lot of it has to do with the childcare issues that I raised earlier. But we also can see that if we're accommodating our workers who are pregnant and breastfeeding, that they are going to come back to work. And they also, you will see improved productivity and loyalty, and those are specifically around the lactation accommodations. This is a very inexpensive way to support employees and getting more women back into the workplace. And then this is just the homepage of our website. You can see the drop down there on the workplace guide. We'll show those 19 different policies that support employers, employees, and children. And all of them contain the information I've showed you, as well as sample policies, what the best practices are, and as I mentioned, some case studies. And finally, before I turn it over to Emily, we also do presentations like this for employers, for trade associations, local chambers of commerce. We've done a lot of work with to engage their their members, excuse me. Also the policies that I mentioned and up-to-date research as new research comes out. Tools for an employer to create a family-friendly workplace, a lot of self-guided programs, webinars, as I mentioned, sample policies. As we create the certification, we will have a portfolio of employers who are family friendly. And also we started doing train the trainer workshops. For example, right now, we are in the process of doing a series of programs with the Department of Commerce to train business counselors across the state so they can be more helpful to their clients to understand the benefit of a family-friendly workplace. And this is particularly helpful with their clients who are small businesses, businesses who have a high turnover, and businesses who are looking to grow. So with that, I'll turn it over to Emily, who is going to tell you about the certification.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Yes, it is my honor to walk through the employer certification and talk a little bit about the methodology for how we created it, and also the process to apply and some of the logistics and details. And I will just remind you, if you think of any questions as we are working through, we are going to have discussion after I am through my slides. And so please feel free to pop those questions in the chat at any time we are monitoring, and we'll be able to pick those up. So at its heart, the Family Forward NC Employer Certification is a way for employers to show that they offer policies and practice that support the health and well-being of children and families. And that's important because it allows you to differentiate yourself in a really tight labor market. A couple of months ago, the North Carolina Department of Commerce released its 2022 Employer Needs Survey that showed that 81% of businesses across the state are having at least some difficulty hiring. And the top reason for that is that there were too few applicants. And there were a number of reasons, one of which was childcare, mentioned as a reason for that difficulty. Just for comparison's sake, that same number was 56% prior to the pandemic. And so, we were at least half of businesses were having trouble hiring prior to the pandemic, and that number has shot way up during. And so being able to differentiate yourself and showcase that you are supporting families and their children is important. Our certification model is rooted in several different things. First of which is equity, and that's very important both to the North Carolina Early Childhood Foundation as an organization, but also when we're talking about family-friendly workplaces, because we know that access to family-friendly practices is significantly less for Hispanic and Latino workers and Black workers in particular. Our certification model also requires verification and transparency. We have seen in data and know anecdotally that sometimes you can offer the policies and practices, but folks don't really feel like they can use them. And so one of the things that we do in our process is review the written policies, share an anonymous survey with you to share with your employees, just to verify about culture, policy use, and just really get a good sense for what is how you are supporting families and their children within your organization. And of course, our model is focused on what's best for children and families. My colleagues talked a little bit about the pathways to grade level reading. For those of you who are not familiar, that it was a collaborative of diverse leaders all working together to ensure that all North Carolina children are reading on grade level. And Lisa shared earlier that that number right now is about 36%. And so the Pathways Collaborative developed a measures of success and an action framework that have been used to inform the state's early childhood action plan and have served as a foundation for other state level initiatives like the My Future NC Commission and the B to Third Interagency Council. And so we have a lot of data and research and input and feedback around those measures, and we know that they work to support children and families, and in particular children's health and well-being outcomes. We also took a look at best practice guidance from organizations like the American Academy of Pediatrics and guidance from our partners in the early childhood field, such as the Child Care Services Association and others. And so this is a little bit about how those pathways measures of success really inform both family-friendly workplace practices and which one of those practices level up to those measures, and also how we built them into the certification. So we know what works when it comes to supporting children. We know that we want healthy development on track beginning at birth. We know that we want supportive and supported families and high quality learning experiences with regular attendance. And you can see that several of the policies that we talk about in certification and that we share about in the guide level up to those measures of success. Lisa mentioned that we have 19 policies and practices that we feature in our guide to family-friendly workplaces. Those are also factored into the certification model, and we ask about each one. We've kind of put them into 5 pillars, which you can see here: wages and paid leave policies, scheduling, accommodations and support, childcare, and health and wellness benefits. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about eligibility and the process to certify and some of the fees associated. So eligible employers are either North Carolina based or have a presence in North Carolina, an office in North Carolina, remote workers in North Carolina, some tied to the state. We are a state-based organization, and so that's part of the certification. We also ask that you have a minimum of 5 employees who work at least 30 hours a week, and that 100% of those employees who are working 30 hours a week or more are eligible for benefits in at least some of the categories. We also ask that you have written policies that are available to all employees, and that goes back to that ability to be able to use policies and kind of understand what is available to employees. So the process to apply and become certified takes about a month, in part because of the verification. So it's an online application. That's the first step. It will take about an hour to apply. We recommend that you have your written policies in front of you, so that you or have the person who's got the deepest knowledge of your policies filling out the application, so that you are able to go through the online application. Once we receive that, we verify by taking a look at your written policies, by sending out that anonymous employee survey, as I mentioned before. And then if we need to, conducting a quick phone call with your HR leader or the staff member who's in charge of HR for your organization. And then we welcome you to our list of certified employers. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that means in a second. One of the hallmarks of Family Forward is that we understand that employers are all on a journey when it comes to their family-friendly workplaces and practices and policies, and that not every organization is going to have all 19 of those policies on our list, or will be able to offer all 19 policies on that list. One example is that in manufacturing, it is very difficult to have flexible schedules or remote workers. And so that's where something like a predictable scheduling practice comes into play. And so through our certification, we have 3 different categories, kind of depending on where you are on your journey and how many policies and practices you have implemented, so that you can become engaged with us. And then hopefully, as you learn more about the research and best practices and are able to participate in some of our programs, you can kind of work your way down from engaged to established to leader. We also recognize that, of course, different businesses have different cost levels that they can incur when it comes to these kinds of things. And so we have different costs for certification based on number of employees. There is also a one-time application fee. And I see there's a question in the chat. I will circle back to that in just a second. So certified employers receive access to our certified employer logo that you can put on your website, that you can, we've got instructions for a cling for those of you who have a storefront or physical space that you would like, where you would like to share this. We offer social media content for sharing and a communications toolkit that allows you to really share out about yourself. And then we also share out about you. Lisa mentioned case studies and some of the other work that we do to really showcase and highlight family-friendly workplaces in North Carolina. We also will offer access to exclusive resources and programming to help you continue your journey on topics like childcare, on topics like understanding the law, et cetera. And then we will have an online directory for certified employers where you can be featured along with some of your policies and practices that we will also be marketing and communicating about. That's the certification badge. And with that, we are going to take down the slides and have a little conversation with Catherine. Before we do that, I want to check the chat. How do you get this information in front of the beneficiaries who would work for these employers. So is this, how are we getting the word out to employees? We have several different marketing communications channels that we use. And then also, as I mentioned, the online directory. Lisa, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the partnerships that we have with chambers or economic development folks to help get the word out?
Sure. I was reading, there's also a question in the Q&A that we'll take up momentarily.
Sure.
So yes, we've been working with local chambers of commerce, economic development, also workforce development folks across the state. And we also hope that employers will also educate their employees about the value of these benefits as well. We also work with local Smart Starts. I'm sorry if you mentioned that. I was reading the question.
Okay.
We also work with local Smart Starts and other organizations that work directly with parents.
And one more in the Q&A that we'll go ahead and answer, and then I'm going to bring Catherine back to answer your HR questions as well. The question is, are these fees annual, and how will the surveys be sent to employees? The certification is good for 2 years. And then we ask you to recertify with the hope that we will have done such a good job with our programming and resources that you will be inspired to incorporate more benefits and policies and practices as you move along. And then also surveys, we are going to send the survey to you electronically. It will be a SurveyMonkey style link that you can then send out to your employees, and then the responses will be captured anonymously, and we will do we will pull together the data. We will also share out top level data with you if you would like us to, though, as I mentioned, we're not going to share on an individual basis, just to encourage folks to be candid with their responses. I see a couple more questions. I do want to bring Catherine back quickly, and then I promise we will get to those. So as mentioned earlier, Catherine Brandt is one of the HR experts who helped us put together the certification model and processes with Performentor, has also served on our advisory committee, and works as an HR expert and consultant with a number of businesses of all sizes. And so, Catherine, we are excited to have you. I will kick it off with a couple of questions, and then we'll get back into the Q&A and the chat and open it up to folks to ask some more. So, Catherine, as we talk about our conversation, so much has changed because of the pandemic, and that includes at work. So just talk a little bit about some of what you're seeing that has changed, and maybe sticking around a little bit here as we get into whatever phase of the pandemic we are in now. Oh, I think you might be on mute.
Thanks, Emily. I would say that work has changed greatly in my lifetime. And we see that even more so in the last couple of years since the pandemic. I would say that the workplace reflects societal trends overall. And I started working in the 90s, both in recruiting and HR. But I would say my parents' generation saw work very differently. And we continue to see how generations see work differently. When they saw work, they saw the American dream of joining a company, being there for 25, 30, 40 years, having that company support them in their financial needs so that they could buy a house and send their children to school. And then at the end, they'd receive a pension and Social Security, and they'd be taken care of. And then we saw that healthcare costs, housing costs, education costs continued to rise. Pensions went away, and more companies were laying off starting in the 80s in the US. And so in the 80s and 90s, I think we moved to a show me the money mentality, where employees would shift jobs every few years. Company loyalty was probably not as it had been previously, and they were more concerned with their paycheck. In the 2000s, that shifted dramatically, and we saw people wanted to be looked at as a whole person. They wanted to work for a company where they felt the company was making a difference or had some kind of impact, or they were interested in a company that shared their values. And so we saw more value-driven models of companies. And since COVID, I think these things have amplified. I think that we've seen people want to be at a place that is inclusive and recognizes them as a whole person who has a life and a family and needs outside of their organization. And I think that's the biggest shift, that people went from, work was their identity and it was all about who you were at work, to working in places and work being a place where you made money, and maybe who you were as a person in other ways was something you kept outside of work. And now we're looking at more of an integrated approach to how we approach work.
Thank you. So, clearly there's some tie in there to what that means for benefits and what folks are looking for benefits. So just share a little bit about what that means and some examples from your work here recently.
Yes. Well, I'd say that, flexibility has become very important to people. During COVID, many cracks in the foundations were exposed for our society, of our companies, and of individuals, and that the way people were able to be resilient through this time was through flexibility. And I think that more policies that allow people flexibility with things like leave have become important. Another big change in benefits that I've seen in my career was, the most important benefit that people's looked at in the 90s and the 2000s was definitely health insurance. That was the number one benefit outside of pay that people were looking at. And then the ACA was passed, and children were able to stay on their parents' insurance until the age of 27. There were more options, affordable options for healthcare out there. When I work with small businesses, a lot of small businesses and larger businesses will provide a large portion or even 100% of the deductible for the employee, but family health insurance plans can still be quite prohibitive. So it is not uncommon now for employees to find that the best family plans are under the ACA, and they might not be buying their insurance at work anymore. So the benefits they are looking for are things like leave, other insurance plans, like, do they provide short-term disability? Do they provide long-term disability? Do they have work from home? Do they have job sharing or flexibility? Are there EAP programs? As I said, once again, they want to feel supported as an entire person. 401k plans, equity in companies, financial wellness programs. These are, as well as childcare, whether that be subsidies or emergency care options or referral programs. All of those things have become more important to employees and kind of sometimes even overshadowing healthcare options.
Thank you. With that, I think we're going to open it up to any questions from audience and continue the conversation.
Yeah, thanks. So we have a couple of questions here in the chat. And then I ask, you all to please either direct your questions specifically to the panelists, to Lisa, Emily, or Catherine. And I'm happy to take it from here. But first up is sort of a technical one here. Is there an annual billing option as opposed to every 2 years? So $750 annually versus $1,500 every 2 years. Lisa, do you want to take that?
Sure. Hi, Rachel. It's good that you're here today with us. I think we'd have to talk about that. It's not something that we have considered because it is a 2-year program, but we're happy to discuss it with you. I know in local government, there might be some logistics to that.
Great. A question from Kelly. I'm curious about two trends that I and colleagues are working with and how the Family Forward certification model is responding. One trend is local, state, and federal efforts focused on different forms of ACEs and resiliency. And the second trend focused on the demographic drought and the need to recruit in hidden populations. Are these trends integrated into the model either directly or indirectly? That would be for Lisa or Emily, or both.
I'm happy to start, and then Lisa, feel free to kick in. In particular, when it comes to ACEs and resiliency, we know that several of the policies are supportive by supporting families economically or with mental health, or by offering time. Lisa mentioned earlier, safe leave, for instance, by offering time in emergency situations that is paid, that it allows folks to be able to better care for themselves and then also care for their children. And of course, with that ties directly into ACEs when you're talking about something like leaving a violent situation and having the time off work to be able to do that, or having access, Catherine mentioned an employee assistance program, having access to an EAP that provides direct support to mental health services, those kinds of things. And so a number of the policies and practices go hand in hand with supporting children and families in those ways, and helping to prevent ACEs. In terms of the second part of the question, let me pull it back up here quickly. Lisa, is there anything I missed in terms of ACEs and resiliency? And then we can talk demographic drought.
I don't think so. I think
Okay. Great. And then I'm a little less familiar with demographic drought. Lisa, do you want to take that one?
Having just been at a conference, I think what this is referring to, although I haven't heard those terms before, is finding people who aren't in the workforce who have had barriers for, it could be
That's
formerly incarcerated people, it could be people with disabilities, what's called, unengaged youth. So people between 18 and 24 who aren't working for whatever reasons. And so what we would say to that is these are the types of policies that can help them come to work. And that when employers are willing to look at those opportunities, for example, some of those folks are going to be coming into an hourly situation, an hourly pay situation. And so the ones that we've talked about with that, it's about scheduling. I mean, clearly a predictable schedule for an hourly worker with children is terribly critical in order for them to get childcare and take care of other family responsibilities. So helping these folks get back to work definitely includes a family-friendly workplace. I hope that answered your question, Kelly.
Great. I have a question here, and this is probably best for Lisa, but just to get into the nitty gritty, can you share more about the timeline to become certified from, filing the application to when you can expect to receive news about certification?
Sure. No, thanks for asking that. So we've noticed so far with applicants that some people just go through it very quickly, and then others decide that they want to come back and finish later. They might have to look up a policy or talk to their CEO. What you do receive once you apply is you will receive the application in a PDF form, so you can look at it and gather your materials. You can come back to it as well. Once we find that you are able to become a certified employer, then we will send you the link to the employee survey with an email that you can use, you can change up to send to your employees in order to provide some more information about culture and the use of policies. And it's a percentage of employees based on the number of employees that you have said in your application you employ. And so we're just looking at what makes sense there. But, if you only have 5 people, then we're going to ask all 5 people. But as you get up into a larger number, it'll be a percentage. So then once that's accomplished, we hope that you can do that in 10 days. We'll remind you if we don't hear from you in 10 days to ask your employees again to finish that. We'll look at it. We may need to call you to ask a question or two. And we've estimated that it's approximately 30 days because it does take some time to actually review your application and look back and forth at your policies. So right now we're saying it's about a 30-day from start to finish.
Great. And I just wanted to let you know, Lisa and Emily, yes, that Kelly has confirmed that you did in fact answer her questions, that they were right on, her words, not mine. So kudos for that. Catherine, here is another question for you. How does an employer contribution to childcare work? What are the mechanics of that?
So there are a couple different ways that an employer contribution to childcare could work. And there is information on the Family Forward website also if you want to, dig into that more deeply after we talk. So you can use an FSA account, and an employee can be able to contribute to that, tax deferred, or you can use, there's a form at the IRS form 8882 is I think the number, and you can use that to deduct expenses either for in a childcare facility that you have on site or referral and resource programs.
I would like to just jump in really quickly on that one as well, because I know often when we are presenting to employers or talking with employers, supporting childcare feels very scary in some respects because it feels very big and tough to crack. And we have seen success and know that resource and referral programs, for instance, are a wonderful lower cost way to support employees with childcare. Offering a subsidy is another way to really be able to support employees. That doesn't have to be building a childcare facility on your site or offering full-time childcare. Anything helps because of the cost of care and because care is so difficult to find. We know that 99 out of 100 counties are childcare deserts in North Carolina for infants and toddlers. So there are more children who need spaces than spaces available. And so helping to find quality, consistent childcare can be a game changer.
I know I was working with a manufacturing client in the western part of the state, and putting in referral and resource programs and helping with emergency childcare made the difference in us being able to keep several employees. One employee in particular, family, fell apart during COVID, had a child who was homeschooling, obviously, because they were in elementary school and it was, they had gone to remote, and their child care facility was not available. And with the parental situation falling apart, those resource programs were something that allowed that employee to get back to work much more quickly. And actually was able to learn we had some new technology coming into the manufacturing facility. So we were able to train that person on new technology and give them a promotion. And all that was possible because we had those programs in place, partially because we'd worked with Family Forward North Carolina to get those things moving.
That's so great, Catherine. I think it's helpful to have those stories of success. Are there any other examples of positive outcomes that you could share by implementing these policies?
Sure. Same company, manufacturing client. We were having a lot of trouble. We were having some trouble hiring before the pandemic, and during the pandemic having much harder time hiring, as was everyone in the area, both in retail and hospitality and manufacturing. And so one of the things we did was we, at the start of the pandemic, we had been planning on doing it. But despite economic uncertainty, we moved to a living wage for all of our employees. We strengthened our benefits plan. We had recently put in place short-term, long-term disability and life insurance for all employees. As well as, and then we added an EAP program and we added a 401k. We started working with NC Works and the community colleges on an internship program. We did predictable shifts, schedules, and we started recruiting at the community colleges that we were working with. And it was a game changer. We were really able to attract a lot of people that we were not employing before, who had extremely strong skills, and were able to put them on paths to grow in their career and possibly even future leadership.
I went ahead and put a question in the chat for folks. It's a great opportunity for us to hear from you. So if you have any thoughts on the question I've asked about childcare, to see what help would you need in order to help your employees, that'd be great to hear from you.
Lisa mentioned our case studies earlier, but we do see that a lot of times that peer learning and being able to showcase employers of all sizes, from a local restaurant, I am in Durham, from a local restaurant in Durham that offers paid parental leave to, large companies all across the state that have on-site childcare centers, being able to really showcase what these individual employers have been able to do and the successes that they have had. We hear routinely from our case study employers that applications are fantastic, that they have more applications than they need, that they are able to retain folks. We've had, restaurants, and anybody who knows the restaurant industry knows that is particularly challenging always, but certainly through the pandemic. And we had our folks who were restaurant owners telling us we've kept every single employee through the pandemic. And so, having that peer learning is been so valuable and important, and we hope to continue that for certified employers as they come into the program and encourage learning from each other.
Great. And I see here that Holly asks about sample policies and or templates, which is something that we will kind of cover at the end, but I think that you can speak to that too, Lisa, perhaps.
Sure. We also start with a needs assessment around childcare for employees. So you're actually finding out in detail what they need. And for all of our policies that we are advocating, we do have samples.
And that needs assessment is available on the website for folks as well.
Are there any other questions that you'd like to ask the panelists? We're coming to time. We want to be sure. Looks like Leslie has a question here. For the employee survey that is sent out, is there a percentage of participation based on company size?
Yes.
I'm assuming that means required. Go ahead, Lisa.
Yes. And right now, the number is escaping me. And I will be sure to send that to you when we follow up with you with the video and the other links and tools.
Great. Okay. Well, I just want to thank our panelists here today, in particular, Catherine, for joining our mighty team here at Family Forward North Carolina and the Early Childhood Foundation. We're very grateful. And I think we have a few slides to pull up here. Great. So these are the ways that you all can help to create a culture of family-friendly businesses in our state. Share on social media. We have a toolkit that is free to use, and be sure to tag us at Family Forward NC on Twitter or Family Forward NC on LinkedIn. Become certified and encourage other businesses to also become certified if you know they're doing the good work or if they want to improve their family-friendly business practices. And go to familyforwardnc.com and click on Stay Informed to sign up for our newsletter, which gives a lot of tips and tricks and keeps you up to date on these issues. You ready to apply? We hope so. Just first thing is to determine who's best suited to complete the application. Gather your HR handbooks or policies. Go to that aforementioned website, familyforward.com, to fill out the online application. And then we will be in touch with you from there. And please feel free to reach out to us at familyforwardnc@buildthefoundation.org with any clarifying questions that you might have. This is our team. I'm Muffy, Lisa Finaldi, Catherine at Performentor, and any questions about certification are at familyforwardnc@buildthefoundation.org. We want to thank our sponsors. This would not be possible without the support of our great sponsors that have gotten us to this point: the North Carolina Institute of Medicine, Truist Foundation, Pacific Western Bank, and of course, the North Carolina Early Childhood Foundation. And we also want to thank you all for taking time out of your afternoon to learn about this opportunity for your businesses and your employees and children of our community. We're grateful for your time. We will be following up with these slides and additional information, and are very hopeful to see lots of clings on storefronts and lots of family FFNC certified businesses on your website.